Your parasite count is almost negligible.
Are you implying I'm making sexual advances?
No. No, not at all. I was just...
You said I'm supposed to play some crucial part in history. Does this have something to do with it?
Welcome to the Dorks podcast, where we discuss with you various topics within the dorky and nerdy world. I'm Val.
I'm Brett.
And let's start this episode. Last night, we finished watching Star Trek Enterprise. It's my first time watching the show. I don't know how many hundreds of times Brett have seen the show.
Not that many. Maybe about 3.
So we're going to talk about, in general, about the series. And if you haven't seen the show and you don't want us to spoil it for you, just stop listening. Put your fingers in your ears, I don't know, go on a jogging spree. I don't know. Just don't listen.
Or just go watch the series first. It's really not that bad.
Yeah, you can pause it, watch 4 seasons, and then come back. No, I'm kidding.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah.
If you have Netflix and you like sci-fi, it's not as bad as people make it out to be.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about it. Now,
Yes.
Since Brett knows more about the show than me, he's going to talk about a little bit of the history, who created the show, and the whole shenanigans. So, go ahead, sweetie.
Well, the first 2 people you're going to want to talk about when you're talking about pretty much anything Star Trek that's not the original series is Rick Berman and Brandon Braga. Now, Berman pretty much started off kind of as a writer, kind of as a producer, kind of as an all-around guy for TNG, The Next Generation. When Roddenbury died, he became executive producer, wrote a couple episodes here and there. But overall, he was the front runner at that point. From TNG, he actually went on to create Voyager and then Deep Space Nine. Most people should know what those are. If you haven't, you probably should go watch those 2. Enjoy.
Yeah.
That's 14 seasons right there alone. Just those 2. Pretty much, though, he's the front runner. He is Mr. Star Trek, aside from Roddenberry.
Yeah.
He's the one. He's responsible for the second half of The Next Generation. He's responsible for Voyager. He's responsible for Deep Space Nine. He's responsible for Enterprise. He also did all 4 of the Next Generation movies.
So you can say that Berman is kind of like the crazy uncle of Star Trek.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah, Roddenberry is the father, so.
Yeah. He's definitely the crazy uncle. Also, a little weird fact about Berman: born on Christmas Day,
Oh, that's
December
cool.
25th. That poor guy.
It's sad because he didn't get too much presents. He's like, hey, Christmas and birthday presents, the same thing.
One of the things with Berman is everybody knows by now, probably, hopefully, of the Abrams Trek movies that came out. And, honestly, from what I've seen, most of the Trek world people, the actors and actresses in those TV shows, really didn't like the Abrams films, and I don't really either. They're good movies.
Yeah.
They're just bad Trek movies.
I can say for me, before the Abrams movies, the last time I saw Star Trek was when I was little, late at night watching Next Generation. That was it. I remember seeing, random stuff, but never into, watching a whole thing. And I gotta say, 2009 movie just gave me that push to keep watching Star Trek stuff.
Yeah, you want to know where it came from, what they were going for.
Yeah.
It was a nice movie. They were good movies. I liked them, but in my book, they're just bad Star Trek movies.
Yeah, they're not, they're action movies, more mainstream. Yeah. It's not Star Trek, but still, they're fun to watch, and I really enjoy them.
Yeah, they're fun to watch. They were good.
Just have to see
No.
it in being open-minded that this is Star Trek, but this is another thing. It's not what you're accustomed to.
But now, what people don't know is how that movie came about, that reboot came about. It was actually in 2005. Berman was actually working on a new Star Trek movie. It was in the shelves. It was being done. But then Paramount kind of pulled the plug on him. They didn't really want to go in a direction he wanted to take it in, which was, in their mind, the same as Voyager and Deep Space Nine and Enterprise and the old series of Trek. They didn't want to do that. They wanted to go with something new and fresh. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where Berman kind of just threw his hands up. He was like, I think I'm done with Star Trek. And he basically left the scene. He no longer has really anything to do with Star Trek. He could, obviously. He's said multiple times that if there is a new interest in doing another Star Trek TV show, he'd be more than happy to work on it. It's not like he's gone out of it for good, but the current iteration of Trek, he really doesn't want anything to do with.
He has a big part in the Star Trek universe, so it's going to be hard to just say no. I don't want anything else to work on.
I can't blame him for not wanting to work on the Abrams films.
Yeah,
because it's not the Trek, and that's get off my lawn, you goddamn kid. It's one of those things because you don't want to sound too old from it, and you want things to change, and that's fair enough, but. Mm-hmm.
And
Trek has cores, diplomacy and doing what's right for, doing the wrong thing for you, but what's right for everybody else. And these new Trek films it's basically just, oh, you want to fight? Okay, let's fight. Get some guns.
Yeah, I guess you can say, it's seeing your little kid going out of control. Seeing the Abrams movies and knowing that Abrams actually is not a fan of Star Trek. It's another thing.
He had no interest in it, and he was going to do it anyway.
Like the other people that work in the movie were fans of Star Trek, but he wasn't. So that did an impact, and that's why it's not a movie that Trekkies like that much.
Yeah, but that's besides the point.
Yeah.
He's basically said he's done. Unless they specifically ask him to do something that's more into the vein of what he wants to do, he's out of the picture. Now, the other guy I mentioned was Brandon Braga. He also started in The Next Generation, but he actually started as an intern. So he was one of those little, go get my water, boy. He was one of those.
Give me some donuts.
He ended up, becoming an executive producer with Berman. He did a little bit of writing here and there, and worked his way up to being a producer. After TNG ended, he moved on to Voyager, basically as their lead producer. He did some other minor work. He actually co-wrote a Next Generation comic. It was called The Hive for IDW Comics. Now, Braga also he's known for some other weird stuff too, like you better all know about Cosmos. If you're not watching Cosmos,
oh God,
again, put that on your list. He was the lead producer and director of the Cosmos with Neil deGrasse Tyson, which we watched not that long ago, and it was freaking amazing.
And he also worked with Terra Nova and 24 also.
Yeah, he was also involved with those. Although Terra Nova got kind of a bad rap.
Yeah.
I thought it was good, but that's for another.
I haven't seen it because it just reminded me too much about Lost, and it felt like Terra Nova was trying to grab the Lost hype and just hold on to see what happens.
So anyway, these two guys came together with Paramount, and they decided to make this new TV series called Enterprise. Now, I think they've changed this in a lot of their packaging. It used to just be called Enterprise. It was not Star Trek Enterprise. It was just Enterprise. They changed it 2 years into it. Now, the reason for that is Berman said we wanted to do, basically, obviously I'm paraphrasing, he said, I want to do something different, and what better way to change the name, because all these Star Trek, Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Deep Space Nine. So they just wanted to make it Enterprise, because that was the one thing that most people thought about when they thought about Star Trek was the ship Enterprise.
I guess he wanted to break the mold and do something different with the name, but yeah.
A little bit. Now, speaking of different, the theme music.
It's been a long road. I got that theme song stuck in my head. Like, at first, I was kind of like, okay, so it's some, acoustic music. The first one was kind of acoustic. It was kind of cute, and I like the images and all that shit. But then, I got into it, and I freaking loved it. Like, every single episode, I had to sing the song.
She did. She actually did.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a cool song. Shut up.
Oddly, it's not... the song that they play is called Faith of the Heart. And it was actually written by Diane Warren and originally performed by Rod Stewart. Now, the version that they play in Enterprise is not that version. It's slightly different. But also, it was also on the soundtrack for Patch Adams.
Yeah,
so it's already a well-known song.
I was going to say that. So this is the first song for a Star Trek show that it was already out there. It's you can say a popular song if it's even.
Well, it was also the first one that had lyrics.
Yeah.
Singer had actual music. It wasn't just like an orchestrated overture. But I like the orchestratedness of the other shows. It let that epic feel to it. That we're out in the middle. We're out in the middle of space dealing with stuff.
But what I like about this intro, especially when you combine the music with the images, is that it tells you a story of how humankind has evolved in exploration, from exploring the seas, exploring space, and all that kind of thing. So
I really like that too. That's part. See, I admit I didn't like the song at first, but by season 2,
you were singing it too.
I'm not singing it.
Come on, it's real.
I'm not singing it, but it did. It is catchy. I'll give it that. What do you expect? I mean, it's a Rod Stewart song. Somewhere down the line, it's going to be a little catchy.
Well, the guy that sings it, it's not Rod Stewart. It's
no, it's like a cover.
Yeah, it's a cover
remix of the song, but still, that's the guy that wrote it in the first place.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, the first couple episodes of it, that music, it's really kind of jarring, especially if you're coming off of one of the previous shows.
It's like a hit in the neck. First time you hear it from listening to, especially for me, that I was, before that, we were watching The Next Generation, and going from, space, the final frontier, to I Got Faith for the Heart, blah, blah, blah. It was kind of like a huge difference.
Yeah. Well, they wanted something different, and they went with it.
Yeah. They wanted to be innovated, because this is the 2000s, early 2000s. So they wanted to do something completely different from the other shows.
I get that. And they did. They did something totally different. And it was hard working with the constraints that they had, because if you watch Enterprise, you should know that it's a prequel to the entire series. It no longer is the original series the beginning. Now Enterprise is the beginning. And Enterprise takes place about 100 years before the original series, Kirk's era does. And you're talking about a lot of the technology that it just wasn't there, because, again, they're 100 years before Kirk. They didn't have shields. Put your shields up was the thing you're not going to hear in Enterprise.
Yeah.
They didn't have phase pistols, or phasers, I should say. They had phase pistols, not phasers. They didn't have, the communicators that you'll see in The Next Generation going forward. They had none of that. They barely had weapons on the Enterprise when it was first launched, and it could only travel at warp 5, if that. Like, most of the time, they couldn't even make it to warp 5.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the engine might blow up.
Yeah, it's very, you can say, old school in the sense that everything has to be very, very almost caveman like.
And that's where I'm going to draw out the first line in the sand that I have with Enterprise. my nitpicking about prequels.
I think I know what you're going to talk about. Go.
You probably do, because I've talked to you about this before. But
Yeah.
when you have something like the original series, and I get that the original series was done a long time ago with a very small budget, but let's all be real, the original series looked kind of crappy. It looks crappy now because it's from, 30 plus years ago. And it looks crappy then.
Yeah.
It looked bad then. It was still way ahead of its time.
It was
multiples of areas.
The set was pretty much made in cardboard with some lights.
And, the fight scenes were horrible. But my problem is, Enterprise was shot starting in 2001. It was from 2001 to 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And they used a lot of CGI. They had, the bridge. Everything looked as if it were a real starship versus, I understand that the Kirk Enterprise looked great back then, according to, but to me it looks like a Lego set.
Oh yeah.
It always has. It always has. Even before I started watching Star Trek, it looked like a Lego set. And
you can say
my nitpick is it looks better. Enterprise looks better and more advanced within the Trek universe.
It does.
Than Kirk's era does. And that doesn't make sense on a continuity level because they're 100 years prior.
Now, you can say, the sets from the original series look fucking crappy and it's a set rather than this one that you really feel that you're in Enterprise. You're really in the thing. But you can say that, of course, they're going to use the technology they have in their hands now. They're not going to try to be as low budget as the original show.
I don't even think it's a problem of being low budget. I think it was just a problem of we have to use what materials are available to us now.
Yeah.
Because people aren't going to... Let me look. If Enterprise... If the original series came out now and looked the way it did, nobody would take it seriously.
Oh, no.
There are college people, college groups that make Trek stuff now that look better than that era. And again, I get it. Before I hear them people writing them fucking emails again. I get it that it was a different time, a different era for TV altogether, and I fully admit it was way above its time. But I'm again comparing it to the prequel. And I'm using today's standards because I didn't watch the original series until a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So I can only compare it with what I know now.
Now, and I know you're going to talk about this now, that since we're talking about the technology and how crappy it was and now how good it looks for being a prequel. The technology that they use in this prequel sometimes is even better than the one that they used in the original show. And that's when I can, that's a deal breaker. That I can, justify for being bad, but... Yeah,
that's a slip up. But I guess, you use what you have access to.
Mm-hmm.
That's just it. And I'm not berating the original series. It has what I'm talking about. They did some things, like they didn't have the chest communicators and they didn't have the language translators.
Yeah.
That's what
Oshi
Sato was there for.
They had the tablets that look way better than the ones in the original series.
I'll give them a break on that because a tablet is still just a little square device. So I let that. But I'm talking more like, engineering stations and like wall displays and things like that. In my book, they should have dumbed it down just a little bit because it looks too advanced. Never mind the ship itself looks like it would tear Kirk's ship apart.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Again, the people who work on this show, it's not Roddenbury. He's long gone. And I guess they had another vision. And I guess even if they want to be a prequel, they wanted to, have their creative ways and do something else.
Maybe. I blame, as in most cases, the production.
Yeah.
Not Berman and not Braga. I blame Paramount because Berman and Braga, while they might have a certain leeway with the show as far as being the showrunners, ultimately it's Paramount calling the shots.
Yeah.
And you know how, especially with TV shows, you're going to do it their way or you're not going to do it.
Yeah, companies will, they will want them to do what they want to see. You know?
They're going to go with what market research suggests, which is probably the worst thing you could do for a TV show like Star Trek. Yeah, I get that it was immensely popular,
They're
and that's okay.
They're executives,
Right.
which they're more involved into, ratings and numbers than actually the creative part, which is producing the show. And they're the bosses. They're the ones pulling the cash. So they have to...
I think you got to find a middle ground between doing what your fans want and doing what the company wants. I mean, you shouldn't obviously listen to the company because a lot of times you're dealing with executives who don't even watch TV or even know what Star Trek is, like Abrams. But they did a lot with it. They crammed a lot into seasons.
Yeah.
Some of the filler episodes were kind of stupid.
Yeah, but you can say the same with The Next Generation. There were some filler episodes that were like, what?
Yeah.
That will happen in every show.
Mean, look at how the series starts. And I know this threw a lot of people off because, again, we're talking about a prequel. And you're basically looking at the first episode being the two-parter, and it starts off with a Klingon who actually looks like a Klingon rather than the Kirk-era Klingons running through a field. Of course, we can't understand what he's saying because he's speaking Klingon, and we don't have the luxury of universal translators yet.
Yeah, now, at least they fixed it a little bit about the Klingon thing in the last season, which I thought it was nice. Yeah,
that was a nice little side story, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
I liked how the series started, with this Klingon getting shot out by some hick farmer out in some cornfield. It introduces a couple people. Admiral Forrest, who plays a generally large part of the show. Whenever there's a diplomatic situation, it's usually him taking care of it. We get introduced to Val, or Soval, rather, the Vulcan ambassador, who's kind of a pain in the ass throughout the entire series, except for like twice when he stops being a douchebag for like 5 minutes.
Yeah, and I say the last episode, he was all right.
Yeah, the last episode. We also get introduced to Paul, who is the first officer of the ship. So, suck it, Spock.
She didn't start like the first officer. She was more like a science.
She was actually kind of like a science officer, but they really weren't called science.
You can say she was like a freelancer. Like she was.
She was only supposed to be on the Enterprise for a couple days, like 2 weeks or something like that. She's a Vulcan sub-commander. She's basically there to be Archer's link to Vulcan if there's any trouble. Or she's basically over there to oversee the mission because what you have is a group of humans who are going to now be dealing with a volatile race like the Klingons who will kill you for saying the wrong thing. I mean, it's not like they're looking to hold hands. And we're running into this big problem with the Klingons at this point. Archer, when we find Archer assembling his crew, he brings on Hoshi Sato as a linguist. She's going to do the translations because they don't have the universal translator. They kind of do, but it's like it's barren and broken.
Yeah, it's buggy. Like it works sometimes it doesn't. Thank goodness Hoshi picks up languages pretty well and pretty fast.
Yeah, she speaks a lot of languages. She's a language specialist. She's played by Linda Park. She was in Jurassic Park 3, a couple episodes of Law and Order SVU. She was in House. So she's been on TV for a little while here and there. She's still doing stuff now, but nothing as big as what Enterprise would have been.
I say that the whole cast is pretty active right now, but they're not doing big things, big projects.
Yeah, they're all still doing things. They're just not large TV projects. Yeah, we from that point we meet Hoshi. She decides to join the crew. I mean, there's other people that get tossed around too. Like we'll meet one of my favorite characters, Dr. Phlox.
Yeah, I like him.
Love Dr. Phlox. He's goofy, quirky,
And
he
he
is
doesn't.
inoculant.
Yeah, and he doesn't have like a filter in his mouth. It's kind of like like a quirky Vulcan. You know, Vulcans do not have the filter in their brains. That's Phlox, but
Yeah,
funnier.
he's played by John Billingsley, he's also one of those actors that doesn't really do lengthy things. He tends to stick with appearances. Like he was in an episode of X-Files. He was in an episode or two of Roswell. He was even in Stargate SG-1. You know, he's done quite a bit of sci-fi work, so he's been around the block as far as that goes. But Phlox is one of my favorite characters of all time. Well, at least in the Star Trek universe. He's probably actually my second favorite Doctor of the Star Trek universe. The first one being the Doctor from Voyager.
Yeah.
This doesn't have a name. And I would probably put Bones up there too. Bones and Phlox are probably actually tied for second.
I like Bones.
I love Bones, but Phlox is just goofy. He's funny. He doesn't practice traditional medicine. He does. That's not to say he doesn't. It's just that he tends to want to use first and foremost animal leeches. He has a thing for slugs
And plants and kind of like a botanist.
Yeah, a lot of the animals that he brings on board on Enterprise you don't really see, but you see creepy things like him taking something weird and gross out of a jar and throwing it inside of a cage, and the whole cage shaking violently as whatever's in there is devouring it.
Yeah, but now you gotta go back into, this is a prequel and there's still, science, medicine is still not there because it's only been like a couple of years since they found alien life. So they're still trying to, get the medicine right.
and that's fair enough. I just think it's also because of his denobulan roots, not so much that it's him being traded about and being a doctor. It's him and his denobulan roots. He just that's just how they are. Like denobulans are weird creatures to begin with. Mm-hmm. They have multiple wives, multiple husbands for each wife, and this is normal to them.
Orgy.
Basically, yeah. I mean, there's an episode at one point where one of Phlox's wives comes on the ship.
Yeah.
And she starts hitting on Trip, Commander Tucker. Mm-hmm. This makes Trip really nervous because he doesn't want to upset Dr. Phlox because, the human tradition is typically one man and one woman or one of whatever. It's usually a husband-wife, husband-wife, whatever you want it to be. But it's still usually only one-on-one.
Yeah.
And in a denobulan marriage, the man has 3 wives, and the woman generally has 3 husbands. Now, to them, again, that's normal society.
Yeah, that's culture, and it's all right. It's nothing taboo or anything.
In this episode, Phlox's wife is hitting on Trip quite excessively. And Trip talks to the doctor about it, and he's like, I should tell you that your wife is doing all these sexual advances toward me. He's like, that's to be expected.
Yeah, he's like,
he encourages him to have sex with his wife.
Yeah, it was like, it's cool.
Yeah, he had
go ahead.
No problems with it whatsoever. He even told Trip to have her give him like a rose petal bath or something like that. I forget specifically what it was, but he's like, you'd be really out of luck if you don't have her do this to you. And Trip's just sitting there looking at him like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, he was giving him tips,
Yeah, giving him tips on how to plow his wife.
Yeah.
But the other side of denobulans, even though they have this this unique marriage pact on their homeworld, Denobulans also don't like to be touched. There's a couple instances where somebody, humans like to be touched. We like to shake hands and touch shoulders and hug, and all kinds of stuff like that. And you do that to a Denobulan, and they really don't like it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a weird situation, and he grows to learn how to become more accepting of that. One of the other things I like about Phlox is they have an episode where they do a little bit of Denobulan background, where they talk about this long-standing war that they had with another race.
Yeah.
And it was everybody knows by now that Star Trek usually makes social commentary. They talk about gay, lesbian things, property, like Data being property to Starfleet, and things like that. And this was one for Phlox, where he had to deal with a patient that they found who was of this race. Now, these guys, their war was a long, brutal one, but it was over by hundreds of years ago. Yeah. It was long since done, and but the racism stayed on. Like Phlox talks about how his grandmother wouldn't let him go on a vacation once when he was in school, I believe it was, because that planet they were going to had this other race on it, and therefore the planet was considered dirty. And Phlox's whole deal on it was he made it a point that he no longer felt that way, and a lot of people no longer felt that way. And that's when I started to really like Phlox, is when he made it a point to tell this guy who was refusing treatment because Phlox was a Denobulan.
Yeah.
Refusing treatment on that. And he made it a point to let this guy know, look, I even told my kids, I took my children to that place where my grandmother said I couldn't go, to make it a point that this is something that I didn't tolerate.
And that's one thing that I really like about Phlox, is that he was very ethical.
Yes. Very.
He was about his job. He was doing his job. He didn't care if you were a Klingon, Vulcan, human, whatever. He was going to save you if you needed help.
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
And it kind of, I wish this show was longer so they can do more of a background on Phlox, because they had a couple of episodes where they talk about him, but I wish they will show at least, his kids or another one of his wives,
Yeah, that would have been nice too.
Yeah.
But that same episode, remember he was talking about how he always talked about his kids not being racist, but he had that one child. Yeah. That somehow the racism was still strong with him. And because of that, they no longer talked. Yeah. And that's how the episode closed, was that Phlox put everything aside. He said, look, if I can treat this guy, I'm going to at least attempt to talk to my son.
Yeah.
And that was a really nice ending, I thought, to the whole issue.
Yeah, that's why I said, I wish they will talk about it more, because there were so many things that they left kind of like incomplete, especially in his story.
Yeah.
And he was a complex character. Like he's been away from his family, from his wives, from his kids for years, just to do this. That's
another thing about the Denobulans. They don't really mind being apart from each other.
Yeah, but that he kind of missed them.
Oh yeah, he definitely did.
Like in the last episode, he cannot wait to see his wives and his family.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't either if I had 3 wives.
Yeah.
Just saying, I mean, it was also hard on him being one of the only aliens on the ship aside from T'Pol. And T'Pol was a Vulcan, so I mean, you do get a lot of shots and a lot of scenes between him and T'Pol.
Yeah.
And it leads a lot of crew, because T'Pol, I mean, she's a major player in this whole thing. She's only supposed to be on Enterprise for a short while, and ended up becoming first officer through a long series of events. I mean, well, first she was played by Jolene Blalock. A weird last name, but whatever. Most notable is that she was actually in Starship Troopers 3, which wasn't all that good. Also in Stargate SG-1, And a lot of people also know her from Legend of the Seeker. She played the character of Nikki.
Really?
If you read the books.
I read the books. I haven't seen the whole show.
Yep.
But I wanted to see it. But
she played Nikki. She's only in it for a couple episodes. Nikki doesn't stick around for very long.
That's sad.
But she does a good job of it. I liked her character as T'Pol. She, my favorite character of all time for Vulcans is going to be from Voyager, but that's
another subject.
T'Pol being one of the rare Vulcans during that era, because again, Vulcans during that period aren't too common. We're just getting to know them.
Yeah.
She's played very differently than someone like Tuvok was, who's my favorite Vulcan. He's from Voyager. The one thing they had in common that I loved is you could clearly tell when they were irritated.
Yeah. And
being Vulcans dealing with emotions, they try to play it off.
Mm-hmm.
But they were written out to the point where you can clearly tell when something was frustrating to Paul. And I actually like that about her. I like the logic side of Vulcans, but I like a little bit of, everything else in there too.
It's hard to play a Vulcan. You have to be, you need to have a straight face all the time. Yeah. Even if there's a joke or anything, but in T'Pol, that she was angry or sad, and it was so slight. It was very, very gentle. It was not like she was she was I think it was something in her eyes and the eyebrows, the way she moves them. That's how she showed her emotion.
The one thing I did not like about her character, she was clearly and obviously sex appeal.
Oh yeah.
And not that that's bad. Every character, they use Travis as sex appeal sometimes too.
Yeah.
But I didn't like that it was blatant about her. It was, look, my titties are popping out. Look how round my ass is. I mean, there are shots.
Look at my abs.
There's shots in some of the episodes that are pretty obvious that this is what we want you to look at for at least a couple of seconds. And again, I blame that on Paramount wanting to go after the lowest common. Yes, sex sells. What are you going to do? It's not overly distracting, but it can.
Like they only did it a couple of times. At least, like it's not a thing that you'll see it in every single episode.
No.
But you'll see it sometimes.
You'll see it, yeah.
Yeah.
Like when they're putting that lotion all over each other.
Yeah.
In the econ room.
You can say that since they only have two major characters that were female, they wanted to, put them up right there.
But they didn't really sexualize Hoshi.
No. There's a couple of episodes where they did a little bit, but it wasn't much. But they did more with T'Pol than with Hoshi.
Yeah, but T'Pol is also Hoshi's not a minor character, but like a secondary character.
Yeah.
Whereas T'Pol becomes first officer. There's this whole arc with her throughout the entire series. She's not supposed to be on Voyager or Enterprise that long. Ends up staying. And there's a certain part of time where she actually gets recalled back to Vulcan. There's this big argument between the Vulcans and Starfleet, and they end up saying, screw it, we're taking T'Pol back. She decides not to go.
Yeah, she quits.
She basically gives up her commission and becomes an actual part of Starfleet.
That happens in season 3, right?
I think so.
Yeah, because it was before they left to get to the Cindy. Yeah.
And I like that. There's other arcs with her, like her mother dealing with her mom back on Vulcan. When they actually go back to Vulcan, and they find out her mom is, part of that little kook conspiracy group, and
even the romance with her and Trip.
Yeah, the romance between her and Trip, which I thought they should have resolved earlier than the last couple seasons, like the last couple episodes. That should have been well established by like season 3. It was very clear that they had something going on.
Yeah. It started when Trip lost his sister in season 3. So from there, it was they started like going off. Like, yeah, there's something here. Like before that, they didn't even mention it that much. Like, I guess he will say something like, "Yeah, she's cute" or something like that, but it wasn't, something that obvious.
Yeah, I like that they did end up changing the way she looked a little bit, and they started sexualizing her a lot less.
Yeah.
Which was a lot better for the way the character developed. It's just not how she was. She wasn't overly sexual, but again, they did do some sexual pandering when they had her go into the Vulcan Ponfar for females. But that was brought upon by an illness that they had come across.
Mm-hmm.
But still.
And the massage sessions with Trip.
Yeah, the massage session with Trip, it's straddling his face, and
like someone needs to grab those scenes and put like a sexy saxophone in the background to make it better. Maybe George Michael, something like that. No.
I like T'Pol. She was good at it, and if you're talking T'Pol, you're gonna end up talking about Trip. Because he ends up being the romance. He's played by what?
I really like Trip.
I like Trip too, and I know again. I'm going to say a lot of things during these talks that are going to get me hate mail. Trip Tucker is my favorite engineer in all of Star Trek.
Yeah.
There, I fucking said it. He's better than Scotty. Scotty couldn't make his way to the bottom of a warp engine unless you put a case of donuts under there.
You're going to get hate mail from, oh my God, from Scotty's family. Everybody.
I love Scotty. Okay,
yeah.
I do.
I say that Scotty was like a sweet, sweet uncle.
Yes. Trip was a straight up engineer.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about him. I also liked the way he behaved. He was very off the cuff. Connor Trinneer, also one of those actors that just never really did very much outside of Star Trek. He had appearances in Sliders, also in Stargate. Family Guy, he did a voiceover in Family Guy once. He was in that Sarah Connor Chronicles, the Terminator thing. Mm-hmm. But his big call to it really was
Star Trek.
Star Trek for Enterprise. And he did a good job. He did a really good job bringing that character to life. In the end of the second season, there's where this big story arc happens that consumes pretty much the entirety of the third season, which is Earth gets attacked. This satellite pops up, comes out of warp, and just carves this giant 8-mile wide swath from Florida
to Venezuela,
all the way down to Venezuela. I mean, it's just devastating. Anything that's in that, I mean, you're talking an energy beam that literally went half a mile into the earth.
Destroyed, pretty much.
It wasn't destroyed, it was annihilated.
Yeah. Like 8 million people died.
Yeah. And his sister was caught up in that. So he a lot of people in their families don't get along. Trip and his sister were not like that. They were very close. Mm-hmm. And anybody who's very close to their sibling, would feel for that. And I felt for him. I'm an only child, and I was like, man, that sucks.
Yeah, I felt for him.
Yeah.
Like, any family member that you're close by, it doesn't need to be a sibling, but it was very devastating for him. That's why he needed something to help him sleep, because he was having nightmares about the whole thing.
Yeah, he was having nightmares. It was keeping him awake. He was having a hard time performing his duties. And it was so bad to the point where Phlox no longer wanted to give him medicine for it, because you're not supposed to take that medicine for so long. And that's essentially how he got started with T'Pol.
Yeah. But over that, like, excluding that, Trip was not only super smart, but he was a hero, a smartass that saved the Enterprise a lot of times.
And he got pregnant.
Yeah, he got preggers.
So
you can say Trip, like, at the beginning, he was he had the Rikers, persona a little bit, being the whore. Like every single alien that he found, he would be like, "Hey, how you doing?"
He had no qualms about that whatsoever. And it was pretty early on in the first season. Essentially, they Enterprise crew comes up against an actual friendly group of aliens for a change, and they want to get to know each other, so they send over Trip, and they show them what will become the holodeck. It's an alien concept.
Yeah,
so far.
I thought that was cool.
I did too. That was really awesome. But it turns out, while he was sitting there playing this weird game with this female of the species, he ends up getting impregnated.
Yeah.
He doesn't know about it, but he ends up getting impregnated. And he's got this rash in his arm. They're trying to figure out what it is, and they finally figure out that there's something growing in him. and they rush back to the aliens. They're like, "Hey, we would at least want some child support payments here."
Yeah, she needed to pay, man.
Yeah, but the aliens obliged, and they just took the
baby thing
the baby thing from him.
So
they went on their merry way.
So you can say that Trip is a father, yeah.
You could say that Trip is a mommy.
He's a mommy. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Are you my mommy?
So he's been through quite a bit.
Yeah, but that was very early in the show. After that, his character got developed very well.
It did.
Now Malcolm, at first I thought he was, he's a tactical officer and he was pretty much right there. But at the later episodes, he started kind of disappearing with the whole Trip relationship and all that thing. They stopped talking too much about Malcolm, and he's a nice character too. Seeing
Malcolm Reed, played by Dominic Keating. He was, again, a couple episodes here and there. He was in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Heroes, Sons of Anarchy, Prison Break.
He was in Heroes? Really?
He was in an episode of Heroes, yeah. Actually, he was in a couple episodes of Heroes.
Ah, I didn't know that, and I watched Heroes.
It was in the third season, I think. You didn't make it that far.
Yeah, that's when I stopped watching. I watched the third season, but I was not watching it too much because I was kind of bored. So I
like Malcolm. He's a stiff character. He's a hard character to like at first. He's kind of an asshole. He's standoffish with people he doesn't really know. It's just his nature.
He was. I said him and Trip were super BFFs. They have a bromance going on. But I said in the later episodes, the bromance kind of went to another phase, and you didn't see them that much together.
I think that was mainly due to
the whole thing that was happening.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking the whole thing with the Zindi and Trip being an engineer, having to stay in engineering most of the time, spending his nights with T'Pol or whatever have you, and then I don't know, Malcolm. He's not the type that really has friends. I mean, I think in Malcolm's case, it was more of a bromance by situational error. It's not that he wanted to be friends with Trip, it's that they were just kind of in the same situation.
Yeah. Well, they had a couple of episodes where they were pretty much in the same place, almost dying, and they have to, trust each other to get out of there. But still, before that, you see their friendship more in the first episodes, the first couple of episodes.
Well, that's true, but they did wean him off of it a little bit. I'm glad they did because it let Malcolm become his own character. Now, the thing I like what they did about Malcolm is a lot of stuff that you'll see in later years of Star Trek, especially TNG and going forward, are directly results from Malcolm. Malcolm introduced things like force fields. Mm-hmm. He introduced
Red Alert.
Yeah, well, at first he wanted to call it the Reed Alert.
Yeah,
because Reed is his last name. But that's like a nod to Red Alert. That's just them making fun of it. Yeah, he's responsible for the Red Alert situations where someone on the bridge yells out Red Alert and the ship goes into essentially battle mode. Mm-hmm. He's responsible for phaser pistols. He's responsible for tweaking the communicator so they work better. I mean, a lot of the technology advances were because of Malcolm.
Malcolm, yeah, you can say he's very essential to the
Yes.
whole Star Trek. He is.
Yes, to the mythos of Star Trek. And also, Malcolm, I mean, I understand we're talking about a series in 2001, but again, prequel, he is involved with the Starfleet version of the Tal Shiar. They are the section, I forget what they're called too, section 32 or something like that. They're like a black ops for Starfleet. They do the stuff that may be illegal, stuff that they can do, and then Starfleet later on can say, hey, that wasn't us. Mm-hmm. It was this offshoot group or whatever. He's the one responsible. He was one of the ones that was in that group.
Yeah.
And that becomes later in the play, later on in the series.
But he got in the group when he was younger, and now that he's older, he just didn't want to know anything else about the group. But he's already there, so yeah, there was nothing he could do about it.
Yeah, I liked Malcolm.
Yeah.
Talk about him even more. One of the other guys I want to talk about was Travis. Now, Travis and Malcolm are the oddballs. They didn't get too much time together. Like, there's plenty of scenes of Archer and Malcolm and Sapal and Hoshi and all this stuff, but Travis Mayweather, he was, I don't want to say the little boy of the group, but he was definitely
the younger. Yeah.
He was the younger, inexperienced, naive.
Mm-hmm.
He was almost a kid.
He was the son of a freighter captain, so he was not into the whole exploration thing when he was growing up. He
was a good pilot and decided to enter into Starfleet and got put on to Enterprise. He didn't know anybody there. He was just a really good pilot. But he has his own things. Like, he's very innocent and very naive. He doesn't realize a lot of what's out there.
Yeah.
And because of that, it kind of separates him from the crew. It separates him from Malcolm and Trip, because they're more experienced within Starfleet. They kind of know what's going on out there. And Travis is just this little innocent boy who's come along and doesn't have much of a clue.
Yeah. Like, he's there. I wish they would develop him a little bit more. Like, he was there. They did, but he only had like a couple of major stories going on with him.
In fairness, he wasn't really a major character.
No.
He was the pilot and really nothing else. I mean, he went on occasional away missions, but his main duty was pilot. Mm-hmm. He was the ship's pilot. So they did have a couple episodes, specifically, most notably, the one where his father dies.
Yeah.
And he has to go back to the freighter ship and deal with that fallout. He has to deal with his mom. He has to deal with his brother, who's pissed at him because he left for Starfleet. And he ends up making, a bunch of changes to their ship, which helps them survive.
Yeah.
But that's about all you get on him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it.
There really wasn't much more, aside from little things here and there.
Yeah, he was not a major character at all.
No. I just say he was a secondary character. He was just kind of there.
Yeah.
And now we go to the big dad.
Oh my god.
Jonathan Archer.
Hell yeah.
Most people already know who Scott Bakula is. He was in Quantum Leap. Mm-hmm. That's the big thing he also had besides Trek was Quantum Leap. He was in a couple episodes of Murphy Brown, that very shitty comedy from the mid-90s. Currently, he's doing NCIS New Orleans, so he's still active and doing things.
I really like Archer. Like, his way of being the boss was very different. It was more like organic. Like, he didn't have too much ethics. Like, he was there, but he was lost. He didn't know too much about what to do sometimes.
I wouldn't say it was ethical, because
he was not.
He did some pretty unethical things.
Yeah, that's what I said. He was not that ethical.
Yeah. His thing is, his according to the mythos here, his dad, his father, was the one that developed the engine that Enterprise is using. So basically, he wants to live up to his father's expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants to do all this good stuff. I mean, let's put this way. He was the type of man Archer is. He was an Eagle Scout.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Had all of the merit badges from Boy Scouts. All of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, that's the kind of guy he was. He was very straight up, crew cut hair.
But also, he was in the shadow of his father. That's why he
Yes.
wanted to achieve more, you know,
Wanted to do more.
Yeah, he had the pressure of trying to, you know, do good for humanity.
Yeah. He's the commanding officer of the ship. I mean, he's the guy that's going to come across new species, and he's going to be the face of humanity to those species.
And you can say that at the end of the show, he actually, his name was like,
He was.
his name was not in the shadow of his father.
Yeah,
was
he
just-
totally established his own
Yeah.
history and story at that point. I like Bakula as Archer. The only problem I have with him, and this is a Bakula trait, is anytime he gets mad, he gets mouthy. And I don't mean like he gets bad language. He gets like saliva in the mouth, and it makes him like slur a little bit.
Yeah.
So every time he gets angry and yells at somebody in Enterprise, there's like a little bit of a slur in his speech, and it always just takes me out of it. You know, like when Picard's yelling at somebody, which he rarely did anyway, you still felt it.
Yeah.
You know, you knew he was pissed. With Bakula here, I knew the character was mad, but I expected to see like spittle flying from his mouth, and like, you know when somebody accidentally spits a little bit on you when you're talking, and it kind of like hits you in the face.
Yeah.
You know, I'm expecting someone to be getting a dressing down by their CO, and that to happen, and they just make like this face, you know, like this goofy looking face, like he spit on him accidentally or something.
Yeah. And sometimes he got like very violent.
That
You know, and looking at the other shows, well, for me, Next Generation, the things that he did was so unethical in so many ways. But now we're talking, this is a prequel, there were a lot of laws that they didn't have.
Yeah, they didn't have the Federation. First of all, they didn't have the Federation.
Yeah.
That just wasn't there yet.
Yeah,
And
Prime
secondly,
Directive.
they didn't have the Prime Directive.
Yeah.
They had the Temporal Prime Directive, but that's a little bit different. Archer, a lot of people don't know that there's a big Star Trek mythos outside of the TV shows. There's comic books, there's regular novels, there's canon novels, there's non-canon novels. After his deal with Enterprise, Archer actually becomes president of the Federation. He becomes one of the first presidents of the Federation, which is a great thing because he would have made a great leader. He did. I mean, he made a great leader during.
He was.
But I think he would have been. He's the kind of guy I probably wouldn't want really as a captain. I'd rather have him as a politician because he didn't put up with stupid bullshit.
Yeah. Like, he got in a lot of very difficult situations.
He did, and a lot of those he handled poorly.
Yeah. But, again, there was a lot of things that he didn't know jack shit.
Yeah.
And looking at the other captains, they at least knew something.
Yeah, I mean, okay, granted, Archer pissed off a couple of races, whereas Kirk split the universe and created an alternate time. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
Kirk was the crappier person in that aspect.
He was cray-cray.
Yeah, he was. I give Archer a lot of credit. He had to do something that nobody had literally ever done. I mean, he went farther than any human ever has before. He didn't know how to get out there.
Yeah.
He didn't know how to deal with certain situations. And on top of it, he's got a bunch of derps in his crew that screw things up.
He went in places where even Vulcans couldn't go.
Yeah, or they hadn't gone.
Yeah. So he did a lot of things for the show, for the whole thing, for the universe. Like, he saved the universe a couple of times. So I really like him.
Yeah.
I really
And
did.
let's face it, if it wasn't for Archer, there wouldn't be a Federation.
Yeah.
Because of all the stuff that he did between, resolving the problems between the Vulcans and Andorians, who were chief members, at least in that time, of the Federation, plus then the whole deal with the Andorians and the Tellarites. Mm-hmm. You got that solved too. Without them, they wouldn't have had a Federation. They would have been at war.
Now, are we going to talk about Porthos? Because he was the cutest character ever.
I somehow knew.
You knew this was
right.
coming.
I did, and I had a little bit of information ready on that. It wasn't one dog. It was actually 4.
Yeah.
Well, it was 4 males born out of it. Porthos, and there was Athos, Aramis, and D'Artagnan. Basically, the 3 Musketeers.
Yep.
According to this mythos, Archer's had the puppy since he was basically a puppy. Mm-hmm. If you follow the reboot universe, Scotty kills Porthos.
Yeah, but well, they said he was the captain's dog, but since that was like the dog will be like 70 years old.
Yeah.
You don't know if it was the same Porthos. Or if
I'm
it was
pretty
the
sure
same
it was.
dog.
I mean, you're talking an alternate universe. They can just do whatever they want.
Well, yeah, I guess.
There was actually a couple dogs that portrayed Porthos.
Yeah.
Well, the first one was the season 1 dog, which was a dog named Prada. I feel bad for that dog because that's a horrible male name.
He was fashionista.
Hey.
Hey.
Look at my ears. Hey.
My cute eyes.
Oh, God. After that, he was actually 2 females.
Huh.
Yeah.
Aw.
But whatever. That's just how... It was a cute dog. And even Porthos had his own little sub-story in that one era where he almost died.
Yeah.
When Phlox had to take care of him.
Porthos had more story than even Travis.
Yeah.
And he was in a lot of episodes.
He was.
Yeah.
Quite frequently he was, yeah.
Yeah. Like, what I like it was that even if, it's dog, but sometimes it looked like he was listening to what Archer was talking or what he was ranting about. And it was just so cute seeing him in the background. I don't know.
It was. I like having an animal like that in a series because it brings it more to life.
Yeah. It gives it like a little thing, a splash of cuteness.
It does.
Yeah.
And I like it that they always talked about feeding him cheese.
Well, dog likes cheese, so
yeah,
that was nice.
Yeah. They did have Porthos in quite a bit of episodes, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Actually, there were more than one episode with Porthos. Remember that episode with when Phlox is taking care of him, and what was it? That nobody in Starfleet.
They were going through a poison nebula.
Yeah.
That nobody could deal with outside of Phlox because his race has a lot of different immunities.
Yeah.
So basically, it was Phlox and Porthos walking around Enterprise.
Yep. That was cool.
That was one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah.
See, that's the thing with Enterprise. There's a bunch of really good episodes and a bunch of really bad episodes. Like, one of my more favorite ones from the first season is called the Andorian Incident, and I'm sure you remember that one. It's a couple episodes deep in. It's episode 7.
I think
actually,
so.
The episode was directed by Roxanne Dawson, who plays Lana Torres, the chief engineer of Voyager.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of Star Trek alumni that direct a lot of Enterprise. LeVar Burton does a bunch. Michael Dorn even does one. Worf.
Mm-hmm. LeVar
Burton. Yeah, he does a bunch of
them.
In this episode, they find out basically their maps are broken. They don't have. They're basically going to an area where Vulcans just haven't really gone yet, because Vulcans don't explore. They just kind of, where they go, they track, and that's about it. So they don't really know where they're going, and they decide instead to visit a Vulcan monastery.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And T'Pol's kind of T'Pol really doesn't really want to go. She tells them there's all these rules, like if they don't talk unless you're talked to, if they do this, you do that. Don't if anyone's meditating, don't touch them, don't touch relics, don't touch.
They're monks.
They're monks.
Yeah.
And they get there, and there's clearly something wrong. One of the Vulcans comes out, and he's basically just trying to get them to leave, which is weird even for Vulcans. They end up looking around, and they notice there's a guy behind one of the walls, kind of like one of the bamboo walls they had put up, and it's an Andorian. And what ends up happening is a bunch of Andorians attack this monastery. This is where we meet Commander Shran, and Shran plays a big part in Enterprise. He's there constantly. Maybe not constantly, but he's there quite a bit.
He's in a couple of very major episodes, major arcs.
He is. He is actually played by Jeffrey Combs. And Jeffrey Combs, he's a long-time Star Trek actor, and nobody talks about this guy. Nobody talks about him. Because he's not a main character. He's got a lot of experience with Star Trek, though. Not only was he in Enterprise, he was in he was at least in every season a couple of times. And he was in a lot of the major episodes. But he was also a major player in Deep Space Nine. He played a character called Weyun, which, they're a race called the Vorta. And if you haven't watched Deep Space Nine.
No, I'm picking up on Star Trek. So far, I've seen a couple of episodes of the original series. I've seen Next Generation and now Enterprise.
She's such a noob.
I'm a noob. And the movies. I've seen the movies.
Yeah, I've seen the movies.
I say we can talk about the movies in later episodes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But anyway, Combs is known because he was he also played he actually played a Ferengi too, a character called Brunt. And Brunt makes a couple of appearances here and there. Brunt is mostly a comedy relief, whereas Weyun is a very strict character. That's just the Vorta that they play. But in Enterprise, he plays an Andorian. He's kind of a jerk at first. Constantly refers to humans as pink skins. And the reason he does that is because Andorians are blue. They grew up on a ice planet. Their blood is blue, kind of like how human skin is relatively pink, because our blood is red, their blood is blue. I do, however, wonder what happens when an Andorian gets blue balls.
Purple balls, maybe?
They turn orange.
Or pink. They go reverse.
See what I put up with, guys? See what I put up with?
Oh, yeah, it's all my fault.
Anyway, the Andorians really don't like the Vulcans. They can't stand them.
Yeah.
And they've had a long time feud, oftentimes leading to violence between the two races. So Shran and his crew are at this Vulcan monastery because they're basically taking it over because they say that the Vulcans are spying on them. Yep. Of course, the Vulcans are like, no, we would never do that. We're Vulcans.
Yeah. We never lie.
Yeah. But essentially, Archer and T'Pol, and to some extent Trip, through a series of events, find a hidden listening station below the Pajem Monastery. Yeah. And basically calls the Vulcans out on it. And he says, you were lying to them. Essentially, this is why they're mad at you, because they were right.
Now their relationships got even worse now that they know that they were actually recording them.
Yeah, basically. Now there's a really big rift between the Andorians and the Vulcans. But on that side, now the Andorians, at least Shran, somewhat trust Archer, because he could have easily hid the fact that he had found this monastery in favor of the alliance that humans had with Vulcans.
Yeah.
And he didn't. He brought the information to Shran and let him go with it. And that's basically how they start off. I mean, there's a bunch of different episodes with Shran in them, some minor and some not, but that's one of the best ones.
Yeah, like, this show was not as bad as people made it to see. It had a lot of really good episodes and a bunch of episodes where they explain stuff that happened in other shows, but they just kind of like went in depth, and I like that. I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, they had some flubs, some pretty bad episodes, but they did have some really good ones. Thanks for watching part 1. On the next episode, we'll continue to talk about the ending of Star Trek Enterprise and Star Trek on TV in general.
Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr, and whatever else we put ourselves in. And yeah, we'll see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
I'm about to step over a line. A line I thought I would never cross. You're asking me to build a weapon to destroy an entire world.
You sounded perfect. Oh my god, sexy.